Very good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to the 100th edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report. Hope everybody is well wherever you are. Live here from Vogan Weather HQ in Edmonton, Ross-shire. The sun is shining. It appears to be one of the warmest days of July so far at a lofty 17.7 Celsius. Yeah, we've still to hit 20 Celsius up here in the far north this month so far. Only 3 days has achieved 20 or higher since the beginning of meteorological summer back on the 1st of June. We did have 6 days, incidentally, back in May of 20 plus, so much so that we actually achieved 26.1 Celsius back in May, but the highest so far this meteorological summer is in fact 24 Celsius, I think it is, that was recorded back in June. So tomorrow will actually mark the halfway point of meteorological summer, so 45 days in come tomorrow, with 45-ish days to remain afterwards here. It's obviously running one of the coolest summers in quite some time, and it'll be all about how the second half of July and the second half of summer overall pans out. So do me a favour, as usual, hit that like button, let myself and YouTube know that you're enjoying the content. Let's get into the live chat this afternoon. We've got Ben Enty. Thank you very much for tuning in. Ben, Mark Kinnish is in as well. Thanks very much. And I know Lindsay is on the moderation team this afternoon, so thanks very much to Lindsay for taking the time out to moderate this afternoon's live chat. So let me know where you are tuning in from today, and I'll give you a little shout out. If you've got any questions to ask away. So Ben saying here, not warm here yet. Yeah, many parts of the UK and Ireland haven't really seen much warmth this summer so far. We had a little flirt with it back during the final week to 10 days of June, but overall it actually took me up until I think the 22nd of June to achieve 20 Celsius here, whereas last June we actually had 15 days. So half of June last year was 20 or higher. This time around, it took to the 22nd of the month to achieve 20 Celsius, and there's only been, like I've already said, 3 days in the whole of summer so far that has managed to achieve 20 Celsius. I'm very, very curious to find out whether we can go through the entire month of July up here without hitting 20. I think that would be tough to do, but they would certainly be a very, very interesting stat to always look back on if that was to be the case. But we've got Mark saying, hi Mark, do you believe in that since Swithern's Day on the 15th of July, if it rains on that day, it will rain for 48 days and 40 nights? I don't certainly think so. I think that's just folklore, Mark. I don't really see that being the case, my friend. But you never know. Weather and meteorology always has a habit of surprising us. We've got 107th Galaxy. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks for tuning in to the live stream this afternoon. So if you haven't already done so, there's 5 likes so far on the video. Please hit that like button before you leave today's video. I would greatly appreciate that. Certainly it spreads the word through YouTube, at least, that folks are enjoying the videos, and it kind of drives me on, it spurs me on to deliver more content. We've got Jim also tuning in this afternoon. Thanks very much, Jim. If I'm right in saying, my friend, you are based in Northern Ireland. I think I'm right in saying that. Let me know what the conditions are like this afternoon, but certainly it is a glorious afternoon, I must say. Feeling a little bit warmer in that sun. The temperature currently here in Edmonton is 17 Celsius right here in the back garden, and we're certainly feeling the nice strong sunshine. We're obviously approaching the climatological peak in terms of warmth in the year so far. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see how warm the rest of July ends up being. So we've got also Katrina in this afternoon. Thanks very much, Katrina, for tuning in. Hope you're well. Hope you're doing okay where you are this afternoon. And we're going to obviously look at some statistics with regards to Beryl Obviously, it is no more, but we did see an 80-mile-per-hour Category 1 landfall in the Matagorda region of the Texas coast. That then moved northwards here, delivered quite a lot of tornadoes as well. I think it was up there with Ivan in terms of the amount of tornadoes produced as it moved northeastwards. And it also produced record-breaking flooding up in the Vermont area of New England. So a pretty nasty situation for the folks up in interior New England over the past week or so here. We've got the Zandazoo 93 also tuning in from Sweden, where it's 20 Celsius and the sun is shining up there. Thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Let me just continue to have a look through the live chat and see who is tuning in. So Mark says, proves though, Mark, with the UK, it's different every year. Certainly is. I think summers, winters, most winters mild, most summers like this. We just get sometimes cold winters, hot summers, never been any different. Well, yeah, I personally do believe in cycles, and obviously the pattern kind of just goes around in one giant loop. And eventually, it kind of almost feels a little bit like a kind of 2010, 2011, 2012 era that we're in at the moment. Certainly in terms of summertime, we obviously had the record warm May. We also had the record warm June last year. And then the pattern turned on its head. Now, I think the very warm water surrounding the UK during the first half of summer last year probably drove that warmer than average pattern. I think if we had the same profile now, where we've got kind of warmer than average waters in the North Sea and cooler than average to the west of the UK and Ireland, and given the low pressure dominance over the northwest of Europe versus the high pressure and heat across Central and Eastern Europe, I think that last summer would have averaged probably below average. This summer is certainly on track to be a below average summer overall. And the reason why I went from warmer than average, despite the fact that I went wetter than average, and also I went warmer than average, was because I thought we would see the warmer than average sea surface temperatures. But there's been a significant drop in SSTs in the last several weeks, and that has been doing a work. We've had a persistent west to northwesterly wind that's been forcing cold waters from deep below the surface of the Atlantic to then rise to the surface. We've seen the cooling taking place, and obviously when you're driving a flow across that below average temperatures over the Atlantic, you're then seeing below average temperatures on the land, and that has exactly been the case. So my reasoning behind the warmer than average is not so much I thought it was going to be a hot, dry summer like a 2018 or anything, but it was the fact that we would have warmer than average nights in particular. That's what drove the very warm, record warm May. It wasn't so much the daytime maximum, but it was the nighttime minimum. Cloud cover was quite persistent during the overnight period in May, and therefore we had skewed by those warm nights, essentially, compared to the daytime. But also we had a very, very warm May up here in the north. The further north you went over the UK, the warmer it was during the month of May, and that essentially drove that record warm May overall. So it certainly is an interesting summer. There's no question about it. I know a lot of people, heat lovers. I like heat as well. I like to sit out in the garden, especially in the weekends, enjoy a barbecue, enjoy a nice cold beer or whatever. But the problem is that we've not been able to sit out in the garden that much. And I think that's been the frustrating aspect, certainly from my point of view. But certainly as a lorry driver, I was used to spending a whole week in the truck, and 32 Celsius in a truck day and night was never a good thing. So I'm sure my colleagues that are out tramping over the UK, over parts of Europe as well, they're probably quite enjoying the fact that it's not blowtorch warm like it can be. So certainly is, as a person that works night shift, you sleep during the daytime, you're working during the nighttime. It's quite nice actually to not be too hot lying in your bed during the daytime, I must admit. So there is caveats, there is pros and cons to this rather cool summer overall. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are hating it. There's a lot of people that are loving it. Obviously, people with health concerns, for example, people who don't keep well, are probably enjoying the fact that it's not too hot and too uncomfortable. Ben Enty says, I'm from Lancashire. Sorry about that. No, I'm getting confused here. Ben Enty is from Lancashire. I was getting confused. I was thinking that was Jim responding to where he's located. So, yeah, let me see here. So, cold and cloudy and wet this morning, says Ben. So, yeah, like I said, let me know in the comment section below in the live chat where you're from and what your weather conditions are. So I'll chat for another little while to folks, and then we'll get into the content of today. So like I say, this is the current conditions here, 17.4 Celsius. I think the warmest so far this July is 18.7. I don't think we're going to achieve 20 Celsius, so I think it will stay below 20 once again today. So, we've got 20 concurrent viewers at the moment. Hit that like button, let YouTube and myself know that you're enjoying the content here on the channel. And ask away if you've got any questions. So, let me see here. So, Mark says, proves though, Mark, with the UK, it's different every eye. I've already answered that. Sorry about that, Mark. This is the problem sometimes when you're actually reading the live chat off your mobile phone and it's too small to see. June here got to 21 Celsius at the end, says Ben. Yeah, I think it was the 22nd of June. We had 3 days and then it went cool again. But even in July, it's been 13.4 as a maximum, which is pretty crazy. Ben also says, I love a barbecue summer, but not too hot. 30 Celsius is my limit. Yeah, I remember back in 2018, the end of June, I think it was, Glasgow hit 31.9, which was the warmest day on record for Glasgow. I can remember that quite well. I was working for Farm Foods at the time, and it's actually amazing kind of driving along the M80, stick your hand out the window, and it actually felt warm. It was a warm wind, and I thought, you can tell it's warm when the actual wind isn't refreshing. It isn't blowing cool air when you're driving along either in a car or a truck. So, yeah. I love heat, I must admit. I do love heat. But I also, from a work point of view, quite like the coolness of this summer. My mum doesn't keep well either, and she's certainly enjoying the fact that it isn't too hot. And I know there's a lot of people who don't keep well and probably enjoying the weather that we've got at the moment. So, yeah, let me see what we're looking at for today. So, let's get right into it. I think I've waffled on long enough here. So let's go into the Weather Bell website and look at the latest CDAS data for the current month and see what it's showing with regards to the temperature anomaly here. So let's go to the 45-day period here. So this would actually incorporate like the final day of May all the way right through till the 14th of July. So this is the last 45 days of the CDAS data. And you can see here quite a large area of Canada is actually below average. Alaska is above average. The majority of the lower 48 is warmer than average, with a cool northern tier of the country, if you notice here. So this is obviously, like I say, this is incorporating the full 45 days. This isn't the month of July. Africa is largely warmer than average here. We've got a very distinct line down the middle of Europe, below average in the west, warmer than average in the east. I'm sure folks in Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, into the Balkan region, Turkey, Greece, up through Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, into the Baltic region, probably saying it's been a really hot summer so far. Very different story here in the west of the continent. The majority of Australia is warmer than average, with the exceptions of New South Wales, Victoria, and Tasmania. It looks as if the North Island of New Zealand is actually average, but the South Island is warmer than average. Moving across to South America, and it looks as if the majority of Brazil, with the exceptions of the far south states such as Rio Grande do Sul, we've obviously seen significant flooding in the port city of Porto Alegre. Obviously, devastating situation going on here. We've got the majority of Argentina and the southern portion of Chile below average at the moment as well. But Brazil and the northern countries of South America is firmly warmer than average. Let's have a look and see at North America specifically for the last 45 days. And you can see here below average across Nunavut, Northwest Territories here, slightly warmer than average across Yukon. British Columbia, average to slightly below. We've got a little area above average up here in the far north. But Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba is firmly warmer than average. Then moving into the lower 48, we've got Montana, North and South Dakota, Minnesota. We've got average conditions for Wisconsin, average for Iowa, and even into Nebraska, we've got the average to slightly below average conditions here. Moving into the western tier of the country here, no surprise, but we've had quite significant amounts of heat in recent times, but the 45-day period has been firmly warmer than average. We've got a mixture of average to slightly above. Down the mid-Mississippi valley here, we've got the warm eastern half of the country at the moment here, so our friends in the northeast, mid-Atlantic and southeast, certainly firmly warmer than average at the moment here. So we've got 23 concurrent viewers. Do me a favour and hit that like button, folks. I would greatly appreciate that. This is Europe for the last 45 days, so no surprise. UK and Ireland is firmly below average here so far, and it would take a lot for us to turn this anomaly around, but you never know what happens, and obviously you have to throw in the tropics. That is going to be a key factor, I think, going into the month of August in particular, to see whether that can have influence. It can have negative, but also can have positive influence in terms of pressure, and normally it can enhance the low pressure that we've already got, but it also can shift the pattern around. If you get a tropical system that kind of cuts up the central North Atlantic, that tends to boost high pressure to the east, and therefore over the UK and Ireland we have seen heat waves developing due to tropical systems moving northwards over the Atlantic basin. So well, that is a factor that needs to get taken into consideration. But it's amazing how you could almost draw a line right down the middle of Europe, average to below average in the west, firmly warmer than average in the east here. Even Iberia, Spain and Portugal, it's not been a particularly hot summer overall. So that's notable, actually. Let's have a look and see what the other areas of the world is looking here specifically for the period. So let's have a look quickly at Africa over the last 45 days. This is how Africa is looking. So we've got areas of below average across the majority of Morocco, actually up the northwest corner, has actually been fairly subdued. My wife and I visited Agadir back at the end of April, the final week of April, and it started off reasonably warm in the high 20s, and then it dropped to the low 20s during the second half of the week. But I think it's been reasonably cool on the Atlantic coast of Morocco through the majority of the summer, and this basically proves that that is the case. And even down the western coast, down towards the near the kind of subtropical region here to the west, to the east of the Cape Verde Islands, you notice here that the conditions are average to below average. I think we've had quite a strong easterly trade wind blowing off the African coast. That's actually allowed some upwelling of waters over the eastern tropical Atlantic, which has been quite interesting. But generally warmer than average across the Sahara and sub-Saharan Africa. Parts of the equatorial belt here is slightly below average in some spots. We've also got parts of southwestern Africa average to below average as well. Looking specifically at Australia, this is how things are looking for the last 45 days. So like I say, we've got a little bit warmer than average across the west and up across Queensland, but Victoria, New South Wales, and South Australia even has been average, slightly below average. Tasmania has been below average. We spoke about that quite specifically in last week's live stream about the string of 3 consecutive nights below -12 in one particular plateau within the central region of Tasmania. And like I said, the North Island of New Zealand close to average, but slightly above average on the South Island of New Zealand. So yeah, let's go back and have a look at the month of July so far. So the first half of July is looking like this. This is Europe, and that is quite the anomaly, and it certainly would take a heck of a lot of warmth to wipe out this cold anomaly. So June turned out to be 0.4 below average for the British Isles, and it could look as if we have got the first below average June and July. That probably hasn't happened since, what, 2011, possibly? The last time we've seen a June and July combined running below average. We've got Gavin Partridge in the house this afternoon. Hello, Gavin. Hope you're doing well, my friend. How's that ankle doing? I hope it's getting better day in and day out. We've also got Kirk Thorne. Thank you very much, Kirk. We've got Chris Clifford as well tuning in. Thanks very much to you folks for tuning in. We've got LGX2. A very good afternoon to you as well. He says, or he or she, I don't know who, I prefer it cool, particularly at night. Yeah, certainly would agree with you there. It has been a strange one to actually, I'll tell you what, my colleague and I were sitting on the A9. Unfortunately, there was a lorry getting pulled out of a ditch. There had been an accident earlier in the afternoon, and I was sitting idle for about 3 hours on the A9, and I actually had the night heater running. I thought 8 o'clock, it was something the 8th of July or the 9th of July, and you were sitting there running your heater. I thought, this is crazy. Even during the daytime, mid-afternoon here in the house, and you're thinking, do I need to put the heating on because it feels chilly? I thought, this is really bonkers. Really, really bonkers, like, you know. So Gavin's saying very cool summer so far by historical averages. Yeah, it certainly has, and I think you and I both would agree that it's slightly surprising the fact that it is running quite as cool as it is, I must admit. But those cold waters to the west of the UK and Ireland, I think, certainly could be having a significant influence. And also the warm blob that we've got over the central North Atlantic. I think high pressure has tended to be stuck, kind of displaced out over the North Atlantic, hence why we've had west and northwesterly winds in the means kind of blowing across that water. It's not only been helping down upwell some of that cold water from below the surface to the surface, but also that wind blowing over colder than average waters means that there's a bit of an edge to that breeze coming into the UK and Ireland here. Ben says South Australia having a cold winter. It certainly is, and we've also got a SSW, a rare Antarctic sudden stratospheric warming. It looks as if we're taking place at the moment, so we might actually see some impressive cold moving away from Antarctica up into parts of Australia over the next week to 10 days, a couple of weeks maybe. Remember, there's always a delay between stratosphere response into the troposphere, but there certainly is some very interesting things going on at the moment here. So Gavin's saying, I'm doing okay, thanks Mark, out of plaster finally. I bet that will be a relief, Gavin, to be able to feel your leg again and getting a bit of fresh air about your ankle. So I'm glad to hear that, my friend. He says the Azores high definitely displaced away from us so far this summer. Yeah, and I noticed out of the, obviously you've got the two sails, you've got one over the west and North Atlantic, the Bermuda high, and then in the east you've got the Azores high. Certainly looks as if the Bermuda high is running the show at the moment. And it is driving a lot of moisture into the southeastern United States, so hopefully we're seeing some rainfall in parts of the dry eastern half of the lower 48 at the moment here. But certainly the Azores high is not really showing its hand, hence why we've got quite a cool Iberia, not only over the past 45 days, but July so far. Let's have a look at the global picture with regards to the anomaly for the first half of July. And one standout actually is Argentina and far southern Brazil. Look at that anomaly for July so far. Let's actually hone in on that because that's quite interesting actually. It really, really does stand out here in terms of the anomaly. So there you go. There's the far south of Brazil. Still got warmer than average across the majority of Brazil, if you notice here. But we do have a very cool anomaly across pretty much all of Argentina, Chile as well. Is that that's Bolivia, I think. Or yeah, sometimes I'm a little bit unsure geographically in terms of countries in South America, despite the fact that my wife and I are visiting Rio de Janeiro in the next 2.5 weeks or so. So yeah, that'll be interesting actually. Obviously it's winter down there, but the average is 25 Celsius in the month of August, so it should be fairly comfortable. So let me see here who else is chatting away. We've got Sweet or Suit in the house. Very good afternoon to you, Suit. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'm going to have thunderstorms tomorrow. Where are you tuning in from, Suit? Let me know where about you're watching from this afternoon. So anyway, that is the anomalies across the world for the first half of July. Anywhere else really standing out? So we've got obviously a warm east of Europe, western parts of Russia as well. Got a below average Kazakhstan, if you notice here. India is below average, and that is because we've got an active MJO in the Indian Ocean and the maritime continent at the moment. So that is driving a strong, pronounced southwesterly flow into the Western Ghats region of India, but it's also spreading right across the subcontinent. And we're seeing some significant rain. So we're ahead of schedule with regards to the Indian monsoon, which is good. Quite a large area of China, if you notice here, is running below average. Let's actually look specifically at China, or at least Asia anyway, and see the anomaly for the first half of the month. So look at that there. India is running largely cooler than average. Much of China, western and northern China is running below average. We've got a very warm Mongolia, and look at eastern Russia and Siberia, firmly warmer than average at the moment. I think we've had a few days in the 40s in parts of southern Siberia in recent days. Slightly warmer than average, if you notice here, across parts of Southeast Asia, eastern China. Like I said, Japan is running record-breaking warm temperatures we're seeing in many parts of Honshu and surrounding islands of Japan at the moment. Let's look at the United States and see what is shown. Let's look at the continent as a whole, actually. So we're warmer now. Notice here across British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan and Manitoba, even in Ontario. It's been generally warmer the further east in Canada you've went. Look at across the far north here. Alaska's seeing a cold first half to July. The far north of Nunavut and Northwest Territories, northern portions of Quebec as well, running below average. And we've got a below average across southern Greenland. And the reason why, we've had the trough over this region of Greenland, so that has been driving a cool anomaly here. We've also got a cold central portion of the United States. The main ridge has been in the west. We've had systems riding over the top. We've had a lot of flooding across the upper Midwest, especially across parts of South Dakota, Minnesota, into Iowa, into Wisconsin. We've seen significant amounts of rain in the last couple of weeks here, so rivers running pretty high at the moment. And obviously, most rivers kind of run into the main Mississippi River, so that all this water here that's been collected in the upper Midwest is generally running south, and eventually it reaches the Gulf of Mexico in the next several weeks here. The East Coast and the West Coast, firmly warmer than average. We did see a temperature of 129 Fahrenheit in Death Valley last weekend and early last week. We had record-breaking heat. Certainly, the standout record-breaking heat has actually been in Las Vegas. We've also seen record heat in the northern Central Valley of California. Redding, for example, broke its all-time record when it hit 119 degrees Fahrenheit. But Las Vegas really stands out. Took 5 goes in the past, several decades. It's hit 117, but eventually that record of 117 was broke last Sunday afternoon when it was smashed at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a scene here from Hubei province. I think that's the right way to pronounce it. This is in parts of China where we've seen some remarkable flooding in the last few days here. So let me have a look and see what else is taking place at this moment in time. Are you watching the football this evening, everybody? At 8 o'clock, England against Spain in the Euro final. I'll certainly be tuning in, and let's see who wins. Hopefully the better team wins, whether it be England or Spain. Looking at the tropics here, you can actually see this visible satellite imagery quite clearly. There's two definitive reasons why the Atlantic has shut down in recent times, and that is because of dry, dusty air blowing off the Sahara, moving across the main development region of the Atlantic. But also we've got an inactive phase of the MJO, so we've actually got an area of sinking across the majority of the Atlantic basin. So the combination of dry, dusty air off the Sahara and the sinking over the Atlantic is what's allowed the Atlantic to shut down. And it doesn't look as if we've got any threats over the next week to 10 days, even beyond that. I think the majority of the rest of July will be fairly quiet within the tropical Atlantic. But we've also seen a record late start to the eastern Pacific basin as well, by the way. We did have a Aleta develop in the eastern basin, but the record was broken by 2 days for the latest named system in the eastern Pacific. But you quite often find when the Atlantic's busy, the Pacific's quiet, and vice versa. So that's an interesting tweet there by Colin R.L. So let's have a quick look and see here. This is an interesting tweet here. The 500 millibar geopotential height anomalies for the last 10 months. This is by London and Southeast Weather. Great tweets put out by Daniel down in London. This was the upper air pattern for the last 10 months. And yeah, there's no surprise how it's turned out the way it has with that very significant anomalous low pressure system. Probably one of the most anomalous lows anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere has been stuck around here. This is an interesting tweet here with regards to the Indian monsoon. So this is a tweet here by Gokul, I think is the pronunciation. He says, active phase of the monsoon here. So we've got the active MJO pulse as well, which has been helping invigorate the pulse of moisture over this region of the world. Active phase of the monsoon has begun in full swing. Rainy conditions to last for the next 1 week, at least along the west coast and northern peninsula of India and adjoining central India, Bay of Bengal, to spinning up a low pressure system. And you can see here the situation. We've got strong west to southwesterly winds here. We've got an area of low pressure over the upper Bay of Bengal at the moment here. There's the Indian monsoon trough in place over the northeast of the country here. We've also got a monsoon trough just to the east of Vietnam at the moment as well. That's kind of enhancing the southwesterly flow, blowing that moisture off the warm waters of the Bay of Bengal inland, producing plenty of heavy rainfall, thunderstorm activity, etc., etc. So continuing to see here what is going on at the moment here around the planet. Like I said before, I'm kind of jumping back and forward here. Do check out Gav's 4th autumn update. That was released on his channel earlier on. It's a QBO special. So a little bit of plug to my friend Gavin. So check that out, folks, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so on his channel. But also, he will be live at 6 p.m. this evening as well, prior to the England match. So he's not competing with the big old England game this evening. So there you go. Here is the 6 straight days of record heat in Las Vegas. So back last Sunday, the 7th of July, it hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit, breaking the old record set 5 times in the past of 117. Pretty remarkable. Actually incredible considering that it's taken so long to break the record. After that 120 was achieved back last Sunday, that old record of 117 was beaten on the 9th at 119, on the 10th 118, and on the 11th at 118 as well. So incredible how we broke the record in Las Vegas, but actually that record was then broken yet again 4 other times. So pretty remarkable heat going on at the moment in the western half of the United States. Talking about that sudden stratospheric warming potential here, this is a tweet by Ben based in Australia. Sudden stratospheric warming event may briefly displace the southern hemisphere polar vortex through the middle of July. These events can filter down to the troposphere and influence Australia's weather, may also influence South America and also South Africa also. So we're going to have to keep our eyes closely fixed on that SSW potential. So yeah, let's have a quick look at disaster news, because it quite often shows quite a lot of flooding events. So we've had the flooding events in parts of China in recent times here. Heavy hailstones, battered extreme rainfalls in parts of France as well. So this was the scene in France. Also had a significant eruption of Stromboli in Sicily, in Italy. This is going back to the 11th of July here, so big eruption, big ash cloud emitting from Stromboli. We've also had scary landslides due to that heavy rainfall in parts of the India region, obviously with the monsoon being quite active at the moment. This was Houston, Texas, due to Beryl last weekend. So we had the landfall in the early hours. I think it was about 10 to 4 in the morning, local time, just to the southwest of Houston. So big, devastating rainfall associated with the Hurricane Beryl, and that rainfall was even, it basically impacted all the way up to the New England region, even eastern Canada seen it. But the power was out to hundreds of thousands of customers, and then the heat during the course of the week had led to some unrest, should I say, down in parts of Texas due to upper 90-degree heat indices in the 105 to 115 range, and obviously with people without power, creating some very, very difficult conditions during the course of the week in South Texas. The fallout from Beryl. So some significant rainfall in Rajasthan as well, in parts of India due to the heavy rain. This is the Urdu province of Turkey in recent times. Also, again, a lot of extreme weather going on in parts of China. This is Ankara, heavy rainfall and hail associated with thunderstorms in this region as well. Let me see here what this is. Mount Etna, another huge eruption in Sicily, in Italy, due to that there. And this was the landfall, I think, powerful windy conditions, Hurricane Beryl in Treasure Beach in Jamaica. This was obviously when it was crossing the south shore of Jamaica back at the early portions of July. So let me see here what else I can show you today in the video. Let me see here. Record breaking heat. This is an interesting tweet here, actually, by Willie Mossop, based in Strathpeffer in the northwest of Scotland here. This is days above 25 Celsius for the first 11 days of the month. And what really stands out, I showed you this in the European Outlook during the week. The UK and Ireland completely void of 25 Celsius so far, but look at the lack of 25 plus for nearly the first full 2 weeks of the month in Western Europe. Look at Germany. This is very, very strange to see this. Low countries, much of France, if you notice here, only 1 day in the northeast and eastern side of the country. Yes, we've had a wee bit more heat. We've had 11 such days and 18 such days, respectively, in parts of central Spain. But even down across the far south of the continent here, we've seen a lack of 25 plus Celsius in July so far, which is pretty incredible, actually, when you think about that. Let me see what else we're seeing in terms of... This is the anomaly for the upper air pattern so far through the first, 9 days of July. And no surprise here, high pressure, elongated, stretched out, with the core of the high more over the western side of the North Atlantic Basin. There's that negative here. So this is actually quite correlating quite nicely with the models. This was what was showing that kind of arcing of low heights between Canada and the UK. We've had that very dark, anomalous low pressure over the UK and Ireland, centred generally over the North Sea and over Scandinavia. If you notice here, we've had a little bit of an eastern extension of the ridge into Iberia, hence why we've had a little bit more days above 25. But obviously the average is probably in the upper 20s to around 30 Celsius in parts of Spain. So even a day in the upper 20s would be considered probably average to slightly below average in Spain and Portugal, given the fact that we're at the climatological peak in terms of heat. So let me see what else I can show you here. Let's actually look at extreme temperatures around the world, because it's quite interesting what is going on with regards to, just bear with me a little second here, in terms of temperatures at the moment. Then we'll have a look at rainfall anomalies and temperature anomalies for the upcoming 7-day period in just a second here. But some very, very remarkable heat in parts of, yeah, I showed you Morocco being below average, but we've actually got some record-breaking heat to speak about as well in recent times here. We've also had some incredible heat, 30-degree nighttime lows, and temperatures over the next few days in parts of Greece could achieve 45 Celsius. So we're going to be up there with some very, very hot conditions in the southeast of the continent. While we remain mediocre here in the west of Europe, the heat has certainly been prevalent in the east and southeast of the continent in recent times. We've also had some remarkable heat in parts of Japan, hottest days on record for parts of Honshu. We've obviously talked about the heat in the western half of the United States. Also seen some very remarkable heat. Hottest temperatures for July in parts of Saudi Arabia, 48.3 Celsius was achieved at 700 meters above sea level. Minimum temperatures 30. I think we had a low, by the way, at Death Valley a few days ago of 106 degrees Fahrenheit, which is up there with some of the hottest temperatures for an overnight period anywhere on the planet during the course of the week just gone. So pretty incredible stuff, actually. Also seeing some record hot July nights in parts of Romania, 28.5 Celsius for a minimum, and during the daytime in Belarus, nearly 38 Celsius. We're seeing temperatures in parts of Serbia, for example, over 40 Celsius by daytime. Speaking of that, Ukraine hottest days ever, 40.1 being achieved, 38.9, Belarus 37.9, and the hottest nights ever in parts of Belarus, 24 Celsius for a minimum temperature being achieved here. Would certainly recommend going to extreme temperatures around the world. His name is Maximiliano Herrera. He has a global record in terms of temperatures. Really, really incredible data he has managed to achieve over the years on a global scale. But temperatures, overnight temperatures only 38.8 Celsius in parts of Iraq, some of the highest minimum temperatures on record in Iraq in the Middle East, obviously a well-known hotspot globally. June was actually the fourth warmest on record for Russia. Let me just see here if there's any other interesting facts here. So this is the temperature, hottest on record for the month of July for the entire nation of Saudi Arabia. 51.3 Celsius was achieved here back, I think, on the 12th of July. Let me see here what else I can show you here. Am I missing anything? Let's have a quick look at Beryl and see what it achieved here. So I know I'm going back and forward, folks. I do apologise for that. And then we'll kind of round up there. So let me see. Let's see. So like I said, it came ashore early hours of Monday morning last week as an 80 mile per hour Category 1 hurricane. This is the wind speeds that were recorded with Beryl. Freeport was the highest gust at 97 miles per hour. These are posts by Weather Matrix or Jesse Farrell, based at the AccuWeather in State College, Pennsylvania. He also put this interesting piece out there with regards to 186 confirmed tornado warnings. And he's saying here that the Beryl is catching up with Aidan of 2004 with the number of tornado warnings. Aidan had 213 warnings from September 14th through the 19th, 2004. By my count, Beryl has now had 186 tornado warnings during its lifetime. You can see here that the majority of the warnings were in East Texas and Western Pennsylvania, up in the southwest and central Arkansas, and then into parts of western, Kentucky, southern portions of Illinois, Indiana, southeast Indiana, and southwestern portions of Ohio, should I say, sorry. There's the 21 all-time records was achieved during the heat between the 1st and the 5th of July. And I spoke a little bit about the heat in California already. Let me see here. Interesting as well. So this is obviously the lack of tropical activity going on at the moment here. And we've also got a global lack of tropical activity at the moment, which is quite unusual for the middle portion of July to see literally nothing going on within the tropics. Also, if you haven't already done so, check out my analysis of the first half of summer so far, based on what the forecast had at the end of May, and also what we've actually seen so far this month. Not too bad. There is a couple of errors, I must admit, especially in the month of July, that I'm quite happy to hold my hand up to, by the way. But nonetheless, I think overall I'm reasonably happy with the way July and June panned out. June was a good month. July, there's a couple of question marks over a couple of things, but nonetheless, I'm reasonably happy with what's been said versus what's actually happened. We can see here some tornadoes even up into New England. Now, we had major flooding in parts of Vermont due to Beryl. This is some of the scenes that Jesse shared on his Weather Matrix page on Facebook, showing landslides. Look at this here, some devastating scenes out of interior New England due to the flooding. And looks as if Vermont's had a bit of a hard time in recent times with regards to flooding events. This is the similarity between Aidan and Beryl. So let me see if there's anything else I can see with regards to some extremes that have taken place. So yeah, do you know what? I'm going to call it a day at that, I think. Let me know in the comments what you've thought of today's content. Hope it has been enjoyable for you. Hope you're enjoying the channel overall. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate that. And during the course of this upcoming week, by the way, I'm going to actually, just for the fun, not a forecast by any stretch, but I'm going to actually throw out a couple of charts with regards to the upcoming winter season. So I'm going to slowly but surely start to build some ideas, early ideas at that, with regards to where I think this upcoming winter could go. Now, the La Nina has been quite sluggish in the last few weeks here. It looked as if it was going to become relatively strong, relatively early on. The models were a bit aggressive with regards to the development of La Nina. But you can see here, this is a graphic here showing the waters below the surface. So we've got a ball of quite significantly cold waters below the surface. And it looks as if, based on this Hovmöller chart here of 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies, you can see here that we have got some fairly strong easterly trade winds set to develop during the second half of July. And therefore, what that should do is it should allow some of this deep cold waters to start going to the surface. And we should start to see the response during the month of late July into August of La Nina. I think we are still on track to see La Nina developing. All being well, it has been slow to do so. This is the CFSV2 3.4 Nino region here, sea surface temperatures. You can see it actually flatlined. So we had this drop off from +2. So we had moderate to borderline strong El Nino conditions back during the autumn of last year. Seen this dropping off. It was expected to go straight into La Nina territory by as early as now, but it actually leveled off. But you notice here that the models are kind of responding to that forecast of stronger than normal easterly trade winds. So therefore, the waters should cool sharply over the next 4 to 6 weeks, say, in the Eastern Pacific. And we should start to see La Nina condition developing a little bit more prominently. And you can see here it kind of peaks during the late autumn into the early winter season here at around 1 to 1.5 degrees below average here, which would put us in La Nina territory. So let's finish off. Almost forgot, but didn't quite forget. This is the GFS 200 millibar velocity potential anomalies here. You can see here that we've got the greens representing rising air and the oranges representing sinking air. So there's that calming down, that lid put in the Atlantic basin at the moment with regards to activity. We've got all the activity with regards to 2 monsoon troughs, one over northeastern India and another just to the east of Vietnam. That's enhancing the monsoon in this region of the world at the moment here. But let's have a look and see what the GFS ensemble is looking like for the upcoming period here. So let me see here. In terms of precipitation, this is the upcoming 7 days. Looking globally, we've got a lot of rainfall over the northern portions to the north of Indonesia here, southeastern portions of Asia. We've got a fair amount of rain across central and western portions of India over the next week or so. We've got the Mayan front draped here between southwestern China and up towards just to the south of Beijing. We've got drier than average across southeastern China, if you notice here, drier than average across Japan, much drier than average, if you notice here, or slightly drier than average, should I say, across Australia. We've got a dry north, dry south of Africa, no surprise here, slightly wet than average across the equatorial belt here. You notice here that we've got a weak wet than average, quite far south displaced. We've got the generally dry Eastern Caribbean versus a slightly wetter western portion, but the Yucatan seeing a drying out. Parts of central portions of Mexico seeing slightly wet than average, but drier surrounding that. The United States, we've got a central and east seeing a bit more rain compared to average. Let's have a look at the UK and Ireland. It looks as if it's close to average conditions in the upcoming week. And in terms of response to the temperature from that rainy anomaly versus dry, we've got a cool central and eastern United States, warm across most of Canada with the exceptions of parts of eastern Ontario and Quebec. We've got a warmer than average slightly across Mexico, much of South America with the exceptions of Argentina and Chile. We've got below average across Australia. If you notice, we've got below average across most of India, Southeast Asia as well. China, warmer than average with a slice of below average. We've got a good part of eastern and far northern Russia below average, if you notice. Again, Europe, close to average across the UK and Ireland, but look at Central and Eastern Europe, firmly warmer than average at the moment here. Let's look at Europe specifically at the next 5 days or so here, and you can see what it is showing. So let me see here. Here we go. So this is the upcoming 5 days looking at the UK, and again below average, average to below average, slightly warmer than average across central Scotland, if you notice here. And in the day 6 to 10, patience is going to be required, I'm afraid, folks. Look at the 11 to 15. This takes all the way out to the 29th of July, by the way. So yeah, looks as if it's going to be a firmly below average July. And if I'm right in saying, I think June, July, the last time we've seen a below average was probably 2011. Let me know in the live chat whether I'm right in saying that or not. So let's round up. I think I've spoken long enough. And see, we've got Jay as well. Thank you very much, Jay, for tuning in. Whereabouts are you tuning in from, my friend? Sync Splint as well is in. We've got Steffi Adcock as well. Thanks very much, Steffi, for tuning in as well this afternoon. Have I missed anybody else out? So I think I've covered enough for today. Hopefully I'll be back again as usual next Sunday with the live stream at 4 p.m. But yeah, I think I've waffled long enough, so I'm going to call it quits at that. Enjoy the football. Hopefully it will be a positive result, whatever team you're supporting. And I'll see you again tomorrow with the weekly European outlooks. I'll be back between 5 and 5:30 as usual each weekday this upcoming week. Enjoy Gavin's live stream if you're tuning in at 6 o'clock as well. And I'll see you with tomorrow's content. Bye for now.